Administration, the FAA, the DOT, we will not rest until we have answers for the families and for the flying public. You should be assured that when you fly, you're safe.
The jet had departed from Wichita, Kansas. On board, several members of the USA figure skating community returning from an event. This is ABC News.
Also, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth telling the media this morning that the 3 crew members on board that U.S. military Black Hawk helicopter were a fairly experienced crew, he said, that was doing a required annual night evaluation. Hegseth said that they did have night vision goggles. This is what it sounded like in the Middle East this morning. That as the terrorist organization Hamas releases the IDF soldier named Agam Berger. She had been held for 482 days as a hostage. 7 others were also released, including 4 Thai nationals. One of the Israelis released today is 80 years old. News on the economy data shows the economy grew at 2.5% last year. That is slower than in 2023. That's the latest news, traffic, and weather next. I'm Joan Jones, WTN News.
Sick of Joan, 8:32, Nashville's Morning News on WTN. Dan Mandis here for Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. They are your Rude Pro partner, and they're my partner as well. I love these folks and have been working with them for years. Now, Busy Bee is always looking for ways to save you money. And here, in a very cold January, some red-hot deals from Busy Bee. Get a free air duct cleaning with the purchase of a new, complete, whole home AC. Or get a free air duct cleaning package upgrade. So you buy the middle package, you are automatically upgraded to the deluxe. Or get a free smart thermostat with any HVAC replacement. Now, that means that you can control your comfort from anywhere. Save money and stay warm this January with Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. 615-775-7833. 615-775-7833. You can find them online, busybeehvac.com.
So it's an accident this morning on the westbound side of 24 at Bell Road, exit 59. It's on the right shoulder. That shoulder is blocked, and it's stop and go up to that area this morning. Franklin, Mac Hatcher westbound at Franklin Road, a crash as well. And then 24, make that on Smith Springs Road in Priest Lake. That's near Rural Hill Road. You're going to find a crash in that area as well. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Joan. 8:34, Nashville's Morning News. Big news from my friends at DT McCall's. If you've been thinking of buying a gun safe, but you've been putting it off, now is your time. Buy your next gun safe from DT McCall's. They are sales tax free. Now, they are the largest Liberty Safe dealer here in the state of Tennessee. Why? Well, it's free delivery and free setup. Other places going to charge you $500 at least for delivery and setup and bigger models and $300 for smaller models. DT McCall & Sons, they deliver every safe for free every time, period, and no setup charges either. So save some big bucks right now on that Liberty gun safe when you shop at your local DT McCall's. 5 locations across Middle Tennessee. Always tell them Dan Mandis told you to reach out. You've got Lebanon, Cookeville, Carthage, Lafayette, and Franklin. Always online, dtmccalls.com. $8:36, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on into the Cross. And we used to call it a gang of amigos or whatever it was.
But you have
Brian,
an Amiga now.
But we have an Amiga now, Brian Wilson. So I retired the O and just went ahead and called it the Cross with Dan, Chris, and KGB and Joan.
All right. Well, I'm happy to be filling in today for Chris Hand and glad to be a part of the Cross.
All right, very good.
Yesterday, by the way, somebody gave me a great idea. It was Chris Hand last night. He said, you should call the Wednesdays when Brian shows up a Brian drive-by.
Huh.
Get it?
Hey, Brian, did you just hear what Joan did?
What?
She does that to me all the time.
It was a ha.
That was not a laugh. That was like a platitudinal
That was
laugh.
derision?
Derision.
Derision.
Brian Wilson, everybody, bringing the fancy words. Brian, have you seen my eye patch?
I did. You look a lot like a pirate, actually, to be honest.
Listen.
Brian, did you see all of us?
No.
Everybody brought in eye patches in solidarity with the host.
I need to log in my camera so I can see this.
You'll be required to be wearing one.
Listen,
too.
Brian, if you didn't bring an eye patch, it's okay. You can wear one tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Brian, we were talking about, and I'm glad that you're here. We're talking about TDS in journalism and about how good journalists have gone south because of Trump derangement syndrome, and they're ruining their own credibility. And I believe that Phil Williams might be one based on Channel 5, based on what we're seeing on his Twitter account. And I think part of what we've seen, especially on the CNNs, is just this exposure of Trump hatred that I think has caused really good journalists to go south.
Now, do I have it correct? Phil Williams commented last night about the plane crash, and tried to suggest that this was all somehow Trump's fault. Is that basically the outcome?
Basically, he tied it to Trump, yes, and then he pulled it down, and saying that I pulled it down because there were some people that were saying that I was trying to tie this to President Trump, and so he had a more measured post.
Well, you know what? He wouldn't be the first person to put something out on social media and then thought better of it. Okay, so there's that. But the bottom line is that I think it is almost instinctual among some journalists to just go there. I mean, nobody thinks about this. Let me just throw this out here from the Washington Times. There's a lawsuit that is pending against the FAA. From a group called Mountain States Legal Foundation. And what they are alleging in the lawsuit is that the FAA turned away qualified air traffic controllers based solely on race. Now, look, I don't think race ought to be a factor. What ought to be a factor are you qualified? But listen to this one line I got. They changed the test for air traffic controllers in order to help folks, more minorities, get slots.
Right.
And the test was basically changed so that you could get a winning grade by answering A to all of the questions.
Are you serious?
No, except for one.
My Lord.
So you miss one to make it look bad. But I mean, if you answer A to all the questions, you were going to get in, and a lot of other people who were eminently more qualified did not get in because they didn't know the secret.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, if that is true, that is what I think we ought to be looking at. Was it DEI?
Yeah,
that caused this?
Well, and that's the thing, Brian. And we had I spoke about this earlier as well, where you've got. Back in 2023, attorneys general from 11 states implored the Biden administration to stop doing that, to stop focusing on DEI. And so it's clear that the Biden administration was utilizing DEI. So the crazy thing, Brian, is that you have all of these TDSers, journalists and otherwise.
And that idea never even occurs to them.
Yeah.
That's what's so weird about it, is that they can't even imagine that there might be another reason for it.
Well, and the thing is, if they think that, what are we at, 10 days into the Trump administration, that somehow Donald Trump caused this is just insane. What about the 4 years of Biden where it is clear there were lawsuits And there was investigative reporting by the New York Times
Yes.
that called out
Well,
this
and
DEI.
there have been near misses out at Reagan National. I paid more than a passing attention to that since it's a place I lived and a place I flew out of, and I did cover these kinds of stories for Fox News for a time, and so they always get my attention. And when you see near misses on the runway, you wonder, well, that's pretty sloppy. How does that happen? How did that? We nearly had one here in Nashville the other day. Remember that? When thank goodness somebody spotted it in one of the planes. The pilots did the work, and apparently the screw up was with the air traffic controllers. Look, it's a difficult job. There are just some jobs in America where, quite frankly, I just want the best person. I don't want a diversity hire flying my aircraft.
Right.
I don't want a diversity hire. Somebody who got a leg up and may not be as qualified as other people doing any operations on me. I mean, you just had an operation on your eye.
Right.
You want the best person, right?
Absolutely.
Well, there's just some places where that ought to matter. And it seems to me, pilots, air traffic controllers, and the medical profession, you could go on and on and on. I believe in merit. I've always believed in merit. And we may find out. Look, there's a lot to go through here.
Yeah.
There's a tragedy. You've got maybe as many as 64 people dead, and it's going to take a while to get the answers that we need.
Have you seen that, Brian? The video?
The video of the actual collision, yes. And what that you've got to understand where you're looking. That comes from the Kennedy Center.
Right.
Looks back across the Lincoln Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
Toward Reagan National. Planes were coming up the river on the far side of Reagan National on final approach. They asked him to make a change to a different runway, and he made a minor adjustment, not thought to be anything all that difficult. And then you see the helicopter. The helicopter is in contact with air traffic controllers and says, "Yeah, I see them," but then he ran right into them.
It's like a T-bone.
Yeah, I suspect that at the end of the day, what you're going to find in this is, you notice in that video, you also see a plane taking off, and that's coming towards you.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're coming in from the south to land, they're exiting to the north to take off. So that plane is taking off and going up the river to take advantage of the wind, and that plane was about, I would say, probably 1.5 to 2 miles behind it, down there over the Potomac River, and alongside that river is a route where the helicopters fly. To me, what I don't understand is, how did the helicopter not see the plane? Did they see the plane that was taking off?
Right.
And suspect and just decided that's what they're talking about?
Yep.
And did not see the plane that was on final approach.
Some people people listening in New York, I should say Washington, D.C., have sent me some things, and part of that dynamic is that it's possible, because there's all kinds of theories out there, it's possible that the plane was landing on a runway where planes typically don't land. But all of that to say, yeah, but how did you not see the plane? I mean, I've never flown in a helicopter, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But they've got, I don't know if they've got radar, but they've got...
If you're in the front, you've got a lot of visibility on a helicopter.
You've got a lot of visibility.
More visibility than the plane does when the plane's coming in for a landing. The plane can only see what's directly in front of it.
Yep, that's true.
I'm having a hard time understanding that one. Experienced pilots, we're told. These weren't inexperienced pilots.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a huge left-hand, right-hand mistake is what it appears to be, but a tragedy. And Joan will back me up on this. When you live in D.C., the landing of planes at National Airport is a constant backdrop. I mean, you never. In fact, what was eerie about 9/11 was how quiet it was in that town. And
also, Brian, the issue of that corridor along the Potomac River being where those helicopters traveled, and it wasn't just military helicopters, but it was the diplomatic helicopters. It's the police helicopters.
Right.
There's so much helicopter traffic that comes up and down that corridor.
I mean, they fly out of the Pentagon, they fly out of Bowling, they fly out of Fort Belvoir, they fly all over the place, and this has
Marine
been
One.
established. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
And they
I mean,
have
it's
these
crazy.
they have these helicopter pathways that you always see them. You see them all the time. In fact, it's rare not to look over the skyline of Washington and not see a helicopter
Yeah.
somewhere.
Well, and the other thing, because there's so many elements to this. Some people are saying that Fox News actually reported this last night, early this morning, that the reason why the helicopter didn't respond is because there was a mix-up of frequencies. Like helicopters are on one frequency, planes are on another. I don't know. I have no idea.
That is true. I've read that as well.
Yeah.
And that is true. But they did that for safety purposes. So could it have worked against them? I don't know. But with all of that traffic over all of these years, and that's the first time a collision like that's occurred, it's odd. It's very strange.
I mean, you haven't had an accident, a real accident out there since Air Florida, in the early 80s. And by the way, I know one of the photographers very well. I did know him. He passed away recently, who shot all that video. And what a day that was. But I can guarantee you that today in Washington, D.C., the eerie thing is you don't hear any aircraft.
Yeah.
I mean, until they reopen that airport, you're not going to hear any planes, maybe military, the police helicopters and the Coast Guard and all that kind of stuff. But other than that, you're not going to hear the jets coming in. It's always there. They take off and land one a minute out of that airport.
Yep.
One of the other things, Brian, that Phil had tweeted out and others did as well, Trump's dangerous freeze of air traffic control hiring. And they're saying that the freeze of federal hiring meant that they couldn't hire any air traffic controllers. Well, the thing is that air traffic controllers or anyone associated with safety was exempt from that executive order. So people are tweeting stuff out and posting
Just
things
not true,
that just are not true.
Right.
And so when you said instinctual, that's exactly what it is. Oh, it's Trump's fault. How can we tie this to Donald Trump? We teased it, so we got to pay it off. Joan and I and KGB were talking about people that we've lost because of TDS. And Joan was going to tell very quickly a story about how she lost somebody with TDS. And KGB is going to tell us how he managed to keep all of his friends that are progressive. I wish I could say the same. Joan, go.
Yeah, so the person that I was friends with the longest in my life, she and I met in the 10th grade, and we've been friends ever since. We got pregnant at the same time, married at the same time. Our lives were intertwined for forever. We were never going to be separated. Absolutely will not talk to me at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, won't talk to
Sad.
me. Cut herself off from Facebook. I tried to converse with her over, text. Hey, where you been? I've been missing seeing you. It was one of those. Yeah, well, call me. We'll talk. And I call. There's no answer. Yeah. I mean, really, it's so disappointing. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to lose somebody that close to you. Over politics, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, I told very quickly the story about my mom, who has now since passed away, but we have a cousin who is very close to my then, I think she was 78, 79-year-old mother, and she was a supporter of Donald Trump, and this cousin just completely broke my mom's heart and disconnected with her. And then when they discussed it, it's because your son is a racist, you're a racist, your son is peddling propaganda, and all this other kind of complete and utter BS absolutely broke my mother's heart. And then when she died, this Jack A had the audacity to say, oh, why didn't you tell us that Amber died? It's like, why the hell would I tell you that she died? You didn't even care about her. I have the screenshots. So, I mean, and there's others, but now, KGB, how did you manage to keep your friends?
So I've known these guys since I was in kindergarten. So we just grew up together, and we were like, again, they were there for me when I had family members or someone close to me die. I remember one time I was so distraught, they said, spend the night over here and we'll take care of you kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And other way around, his grandpa died, and he was just sitting like crying his eyes out. I just gave him a hug. And like he always remembered that. And it's these things that they're there for me when I needed them, and I was there for them when they needed me. and they know I'm conservative. They know they definitely know I voted for Trump. And we sometimes talk about politics, but I always say at the end, I'm glad we can have this talk and still remain like this close.
Boy, that's really when do we lose that?
Yeah, like I always emphasize that at the end of our like little political discussions we have. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes they send me links like in a group chat, and I'm just like, I'm not even gonna touch that. But like, there's times where we're talking, I'm just like, guys, I'm so glad I'm able to talk about this with you guys, even if we disagree, and they agree, and we're still close.
Brian, we lost it when Trump came down the escalator. That's when we lost it. And, a lot of people blowing up the super text line.
That's true.
Where if they disconnected with you over politics, then they weren't friends to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can only say that I've never really lost a personal friend over that. As far as I know, maybe some people, just it sort of vanished out of my life and I haven't picked up on it. But I don't know of anybody like that. But I do know that when I lived in D.C. And I was single, and I would go out on a date, I've actually had dates get up and walk out on me when they found out what I did for a living.
You had that happen too?
Oh, yeah.
I was, true story, some people have heard this already. When I was single, B.A., before Amy, I sat down with a woman, and it was at Starbucks, and we sat down, and I told her what I did for a living. Do you know what she said?
What?
You're that guy? And she got up and she left.
Yeah.
Put that on the your wall.
She was polite. She said, you know what? This is just not going to work. Thank you very much. And she just literally got up and walked out the door. And I went, okay. So, when I moved to Nashville, of course, when you live in D.C., 3 out of 4 people are Democrats.
Right.
And so, that you have to understand that, that's going to be a thing. And I would ask people, are politics important to you? Is it something you follow?
Yeah.
And if they said, oh, yes, I'm very much in politics, then I had to explore, well, what are your politics, if I may ask? And they would say, well, why do you want to know? I said, trust me, when I reveal the rest of this information, you will understand why I'm asking.
Yeah.
And so when I went on my first date with Cabana Wife, the first thing I asked her, well, before we get too deep into this, let's find out. Do you have are you strong political beliefs? And turns out she's a very conservative individual and had been listening to me and hadn't put together that the person she was going out on the date with was the guy that she had been listening to on the radio.
Oh, very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I make sure I date conservative women also. I anytime I see like a liberal comment, I'm like, ugh, I'm not going to risk
It's just easier, isn't it?
It's so much easier.
You mean you can find Russian girls that have conservative viewpoints?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
But I also look at like if they're religious, I kind of trust them more too. Like I'm like when it comes to like if they are very like they say they love Jesus or something like that, I feel like okay, you have a little bit of conservative value. You might not be totally conservative, but that religious aspect is important.
Now the question is, Brian and I had the same experience. Got up and walked out. The question, Brian, is that had they not walked out, could you date a Democrat? Could you date somebody who had the polar opposite political views of you?
I there was a time when I thought I could, just because to me, your personal relationships, it's okay to have a different opinion. I may not. I was married to a person who had a different opinion once before, and we got along okay. This was when I was working at Fox News. But I think now I just wouldn't be as comfortable in the relationship at this point. Not saying it would be impossible, but it would be harder.
I will say this.
Thank goodness I don't have to go look.
I was just going to say, Dawn would make that really hard on you, too.
I would say this, is that one of the things that I love with Amy is talking politics. And she and I love to speak about politics, and I know that when her eyes start glazing over, I've gone too far, and it's time to switch the topic, but whatever.
You get that 60-yard stare.
Yes. All right, Brian Wilson in for Chris Sanders coming up next. Joan Jones has the news. Joan, what's up?
Yeah, we have the latest on the plane crash, the plane and helicopter collision in Washington, D.C. Also, we'll take a look at what's going on today with the final day of the special session for state lawmakers. That's coming up at 9 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Joan. At 8:56, Dan Mandis here. I always recommend Mark Spain Real Estate here in Nashville because I trust that they'll sell your home hassle-free with a strong all-cash offer. Now, they've been helping homeowners sell their homes for nearly 30 years, and they've served over 63,000 families. And with all those clients, Mark Spain Real Estate is the nation's #1 most reviewed real estate company. They've got over 12,500 five-star reviews. You know, the Wall Street Journal and Real Trends have consistently named Mark Spain Real Estate as a top real estate team in America for 8 years in a row, including being ranked #1 in the nation for closed transactions 5 years in a row. There's a reason they've got so much success. It is that guaranteed offer, a quick sale and maximum profit. So get your guaranteed offer today and start packing at 855-299-SOLD, 855-299-SOLD, online anytime at markspain.com and start packing.